people are not the same anymore. People are not the same creatures walking the earth today that walked the earth 200 years ago. So there has to be something happening in this particular healing art that fits with the current time. He came in and he said, I need something from you. I need a miracle. And I said, well, I just so happen to have this miracle right here that we just made last week.
If you've got some homeopaths listening to this episode that have never done a trituration, give them like a 1-minute elevator pitch of why they need to do triturations.
Okay, so let's say
today's guest is Anneke Hogeland. Now, she is one of the co-authors of the Trituration Handbook into the Heart of Homeopathy. Now, personally, I believe that every homeopath should be taking part in triturations. I also feel that they should be taught in homeopathy schools, but that's just me, just saying. For anybody who hasn't been part of a trituration and would like to be, or would like to do your own trituration, this is the definitive textbook to teach you everything you need to know about it. It's very practical. It even has some illustrations, and it has some information in the back of the book of a few different remedies that Anneke was part of the trituration of. So definitely give trituration a try. Go and check out this book. It should be a textbook on every school's book list. Also, in my humble opinion, you don't have to listen to me. Either way, I hope you enjoy this episode, and thanks so much for listening.
Welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout Podcast, where we discuss all things homeopathy from around the world. And now our mum and your host, Eugenie Kruger.
Hello, homies, and welcome back to Homeopathy Hangout, where I have such a special guest today for you, Anneke Hogeland. I hope I said it right, Hogeland. How would you say it?
I say Hogeland.
Hogeland, okay. Welcome, Anneke, welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Oh, I have been trying to get you on the podcast for a little while because I am obsessed with your book, The Trituration Handbook. In fact, I'm obsessed with triturations anyways, thanks to some of my homeopath friends. And I reached out to a few of them last year and I was like, what is the best book I can buy on triturations? And your book came up from everyone that I asked. And this really is the definitive guide. And you wrote it with Judy Schriebman, who unfortunately has passed on. So we'll just say, thank you, Judy. We're thinking of you.
No kidding. Yeah, she was a huge part of that journey because I started going to seminars in the Netherlands when I was doing my homeopathic education. And I did a lot of training with Alice Timmerman, who was just starting triturating, right? So I did these early triturations with her at her place in The Hague and, brought them home. And then the three of us, Jonathan Shore and Judy and I wrote a book on bird remedies, but there weren't that many bird remedies around. So we had to make them. So that's where our local Northern California group kind of sprung up, who all were, once you've done a good trituration where you really have been in the energy field and have felt the energy of the substance developing over time just by, grinding and scraping and doing nothing much of anything else. That's where that group actually came from the bird book, because we needed more birds than there were. The birds that were in homeopathy were, I think at the time, eagle and
probably swan.
That had been done from blood. And we wanted it done from talons and feather. And the other one was a vulture.
Oh.
Somebody had done a vulture, so, So we took it from there and we scraped together various other birds from here, there, and everywhere. But, we sat around the table and did the long, grinding and scraping scenario. And, but then after that, Judy and I were thinking, nowhere in homeopathy is it clearly described how to do a trituration. I mean, if you read the Organon, Hahnemann's Organon, you're not going to be able to do a trituration from there. So we read the Organon by, is it Betsy Riley?
Oh,
wrote one.
Wenda Bruce Riley.
Yeah. And then there was another one by a man named Reeves, an Israeli man, who both got a little bit closer than Hahnemann. But Judy and I said, no, we need to get rid of all the fluff and just do something on triturations. So, that was our plan. And we didn't really have a good plan in mind. We wanted to have the cartoons in there, the paper, so people could actually see what we use, instead of saying a tablespoon of this and a vial of that. We drew the whole thing out. We think, you can't miss it, right? This is described very well.
I'm just going to pipe in here for anybody who's watching on the video, because we have the podcast, just the audio, and then some people watch on the video. But if you're watching on the video, I'm just holding up what Anneke means by the visual. Now, I'm a visual learner. So when I saw this image, it just made complete sense to me. And it might sound really silly because it's just a cartoon. But honestly, for me, seeing this, and maybe I'm stupid or something, but seeing this, so, okay, there's the image. Okay, so I do that. Okay, that goes in there. Okay, then bang. It made complete sense to me when I saw it that way. So, but the description is really clear as well. Now, I've got a confession to make, because I was making a mistake when I was doing triturations, and that was once I had done to C4, I would then take some of that powder, add 99 drops of water as a cut, and then I would call that a C1. But your book corrected me, and that then is actually a C5. So I don't know where in my education I missed that part, but in your book with the images, it actually clearly says, okay, now this is C5. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing it wrong, which probably is not a major problem, but still, I should have known that.
Well, it's just, but it's just because it isn't anywhere else. So then the other thing we didn't want to do with this book is we didn't want to confuse it with a lot of other books in homeopathy. We just wanted to stick to triturations. So we did some of the ones. I think the one that's in there is a kidney stone, where we actually triturated, and we did that twice successfully. But, just think of the implications of that, right? If you have somebody with a chronic disease where you have something like that you can actually triturate, chances are it's going to be of great benefit to that person. So, we need to be thinking in that direction, right? We need our thinking to shift from, well, what would be the good remedy in this case? And I think the one remedy we describe, which is really interesting. So we had Alisa came to the United States, and it was a seminar on the treatment of cancer. And at the beginning of the seminar, we read this thing from Witold Ehrler, who's one of the German people who really followed the organon to the letter, to the old. So he never stopped. And the first remedy that he made is he made nicotine, because he had a friend who couldn't stop smoking. So he thought, well, I'm going to make a homeopathic remedy. And he went to the library, found an organon, and, kept on going on this thing. And as he went to higher levels, more and more information kept coming up. So then this man was not a homeopath. He's really kind of, when I met him, I would say overgrown hippie, would describe him perfectly, but he didn't understand what was going on. So he contacted some homeopaths in Germany. And of course, in the early days of triturations, people just laughed at you, But there were a few people who said, well, let's investigate that. Let's take a remedy that we know and, let's start from the beginning and let's see what we got. And every time they did this, they got a much bigger picture of that remedy, right? And it's sort of like at the end of a trituration, what I always say is what you want is you want somebody to walk into your office that needs that remedy within the next 2 or 3 days. Otherwise, you're missing the mark, And generally, I would say that's been true.
Yeah.
But back to this angel, which was quite amazing. Yeah, because carcinosin we describe in the book, but that is just carcinosin, right? But I don't know what year that. It's probably on the website when we did this big seminar, people from all over the place. Medical homeopaths, non-medical homeopaths, probably close to 50 people. So we read this thing that Whittle had said, and Whittle had said, everybody that deals with cancer needs an angel. And they can't all be the same angel, because for you, it's going to be different than for you. It's going to be a different cancer. It's going to be a different support situation. It's going to be a different medical situation. Anyway, he wrote this fairly, what I would say, it was almost like a directive. He said, we just need to start with the powder, and everybody needs to start grinding, and we need to keep cancer in mind, and we need to keep an angel in mind. And, some people danced during this seminar. We did lots of drawings and, big ones on big paper where multiple people contributed. And, to see these very serious medical homeopaths who were always kind of, a few steps above us normal people, that's just doctors. Everybody participated. And during that seminar, we had a live patient, who had cancer, had been sick for quite some while. She had actually been a patient of Judy and I. Together, we were treating her. And after we had the C5, they were discussing in the room which remedy to give her, right? And at the time, I had to be out of the room for some reason. And when I came back, I'd been gone for like 2 hours. There's this normal conversation, that you have in a seminar. This would be really good. That would be really good. I was listening to this for 5 minutes, and I stood up and I said, you guys are all crazy. This woman screams for the remedy that we just made. I mean, everything that she has expressed says this is the remedy she needs, right? And actually, she's still alive today.
Wow.
So this is quite amazing, because she was very, very, very ill and had been in and out of remission, and she was not in good shape. So the cancer angel since then has had a lot of exposure worldwide, because there were people from Australia, from New Zealand, from all over Europe, of course, from all over the States. And anybody that was there could not possibly ever forget that experience. So all of those people were inspired to do triturations, right? So you can see the level of disorganization, but also
Yeah.
how it changes from one level to another.
Mm.
And these are, different people. So when we did the marigold, calendula, which is a very simple remedy, but is a very potent and powerful remedy in a lot of situations. So we thought, let's take a flower from the garden and let's make calendula. And really, we do it with cases that we had, and we describe and sort of report on the kinds of things people were saying and hearing and intuiting, whatever. Quite amazing.
Well,
And
I have to share something with you about calendula or marigold, actually, because in your book, you were describing how during the trituration, you realized that calendula is really good for old wounds that kind of heal too quickly, and there's still things there that needs to be healed. And my daughter, about 4 years, 5 years ago maybe, hit her head they were in a playground, hit her head. She came running. There was this blood all over her face. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Luckily, the cut wasn't that big in the end when we got home. We thought we might have to go get stitches, but it wasn't that big. And, head wounds can bleed quite profusely. We used some hypercal tincture topically and arnica, hypericum, all those sorts of things, and it healed up. But around the time I was reading your book, and of course it's synchronistic. I saw her scratching her head and she goes, oh, Mum, it's bleeding. And I'm like, what's going on? And she said, this is where I hit my head 4 years ago. And every now and again, I scratch it because there's still a little bump and the blood comes up. And I was like, well, I have just read this book about calendula. And so I gave her calendula. And it was, of course, next day, all gone. But now I know that if that ever pops back in, and I did say to her at the time, we might have to use calendula, repeatedly just to kind of get down to that, whatever caused that disharmony for it to not heal properly in the first place or heal too quickly. Maybe me applying the hypercal topically made it heal too quickly and there was still something that needed to come out or whatever. But the calendula, it was amazing. And of course, it was so synchronistic that I had just read your book at the time. So,
did you do it topically, or did you give her pellets.
At the time when, the second, like recently, I gave her pellets. So I just gave her calendula pellets.
Because I always find that the gel is amazing, you know.
I use it in a tincture. I love it in a tincture. I have got so many photos of crazy wounds that I've healed from the hypercal tincture topically. It's so good. The hypericum and calendula tincture combinations.
Yeah, they're good. You know, so that's a remedy that we knew, right, fairly well. That was being used very commonly everywhere. And as we saw, and as we could see in the cases where we were using it, it could do a whole lot more than what we thought it could do, you know? Because when you learn the remedy calendula first, it's a fairly simple remedy. You use it only for a few things, and you don't use it in open wounds, you know, but blah, 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 blah. I mean, you know the story. So we thought that was great, you know? So then we thought, okay, if there's something that we have a strong feeling about, like you have with your feather, right? I had extremely strong feelings about the persimmon.
And actually, just quickly tell our listeners that we have got a substance that we're going to be triturating soon. I have a question to ask you about this because we actually have accessed a male and a female feather. So I don't know if you would be the one to ask, has there ever been a trituration done of a male and female feather together?
I'm sure not.
Well, it's going to be really fascinating because the male and the females have different tail feathers. They look the same otherwise, but actually, no, the female's actually a bit more of a colorful one. And interestingly, the first year or so of their life, the males and females both have female feathers. And it's only after about a year or so that if it's a male, that they start dropping their female feathers and get male feathers.
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I can't wait to do this trituration.
So what I would suggest is that you do a couple of things. That you keep them separate.
Oh, okay. They're in the same bag at the moment. So you think triturate them separately?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should separate them and then separate them together because it's, species-wise, it's very rare for the female to be more beautiful than the male.
Yes.
To be more colorful. But species-wise, it's not true that the female is less capable. It's a different energy, you know? So I would like to know what happens when they commingle, but I would like to know them individually first. So go up to C5 with them.
Yeah.
And then put the feathers together and start the process from the beginning and take the two of them up to C5 and see what comes up. It might be all the same. I don't know. It might be that you come up with very much the same information.
Yeah.
Because the essential bird is the essential bird. And,
That's what I was wondering. And it's not, it's all synchronicity, but, I said that I will triturate this substance if it reveals, like, if the feather falls on our land. And, a friend came and gifted me a male feather. And then later on, she gifted me a female feather. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. But I told the universe that I wanted to drop it on my land. And then I decided to go for a walk after she'd just given me this feather and I was walking on our land. And I was like, I just really would feel better if it was on our land. And of course, I look up and there's a female feather. It was about 1 meter outside our fence, just on public land. But I was like, okay, you can't be too fussy. It was technically sitting in the tree on our land. And the feather, because I took a video of the birds a few days earlier, I saw them sitting there, but didn't see the feather falling. So technically it wasn't our side, but the feather fell on the other side of the fence. I'm like, it won't be too technical. And then the next day, my son picked up the female feather. So I picked up the male feather. And what was interesting is that we had already decided we were going to do it on the 3rd of March, so on the full moon. And there's actually eclipse as well. No, sorry. Was that eclipse or a full moon? I can't remember now. But the feather kind of looked like an eclipse. It had these two kind of like spots on them. Anyway, like when I start talking like crazy speak like this, I know that what that's like, right? When you decide that you're going to do the substance, these things just come towards you and synchronicities happen and it is wild. You can't make this stuff up. Anyway, You were talking about persimmon. I'm so sorry. What were you saying about persimmon?
Well, no, I was saying when you have a strong feeling about something, and we were just wondering, right? But in a group and, is that something you should go for? Or is that? So I said, well, if we're going to do something that we're going to have, that we have strong feelings about, we should do it about persimmon because I have always hated them. And as far as I know, I don't even know what they taste like, you know? But there was a woman in Holland who had made a remedy from the persimmon tree, which is the species that survived the bombing in Nagasaki. And, those trees are planted all over the world. And she had made this remedy from the tree that was in The Hague. Yeah. Yeah. And she made the most outrageous claims about this remedy, what it could do. Burn victims, radiation burns and real burns. And she wanted to call this remedy by her own name. So I was upset about that because you just don't do that. Why? It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about substance. So I thought at some point I have to do this remedy, but I really didn't want to because I don't like the things, but we did. And actually what we did there, we did the persimmon that is not the same one as the one that survived Nagasaki. So I don't know if there is a difference, within the species. That's why I'm saying do the feathers 1, and then 2 to see what happens, because then you can follow the evolution of that particular substance really well. And so we set off, and usually when we do a trituration, we meet at somebody's house. We all kind of sit around the same table, or, we have 2 tables and we have food on the side, and so that you can gauge what it does to appetite and or lack thereof, or what it does to your urinary system. You're taking notes on all of that stuff, and nothing is immaterial. Let me tell you, in the beginning, we didn't note down a lot of stuff, but if you have a good sized group who are all dedicated, and you write down, I didn't like the sound of the door closing or something immaterial like that. But then you find out later that, 70% of the people had exactly the same reaction. So it has something to do with either mentally, emotionally about noise or about noise. So it's something about audition. So you never know. But the persimmon, quite a while ago, but it's like yesterday. Because what started to happen immediately, I started to get very, very hot. I mean, really, really hot. I was running my hands under the cold water, putting them up against the wall, just finding, like, I don't know if you've ever peeled a hot chili without protecting your hands. Well, I don't recommend it.
Okay, thanks.
But that's the thing, and I wasn't the only one. There were like 3 or 4 people that were really suffering this heat from this persimmon. And then there was also, towards the end, this depression set in. I actually closed my practice, the only time I've ever done this, right? My psychotherapy practice for a week, because the depression had set in and I just could not get out of it, and then slowly but surely it wore off. But so remedies can have very, very profound effects as you go deeper into them, And then, of course, later we started going higher, right? We started going and keeping going until you got nothing new, right? Because why C5? Why C4? Why C3 for that matter, C3 because that's what Hahnemann said, but apparently Hahnemann didn't say that in the Organon that Witold Erlo read, because Witold continued to triturate higher, 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 right? And it's really funny because I remember we did a sea turtle. We got a piece of sea turtle from one of the Pacific Ocean islands and a protected species. And there were 8 of us, and we decided to camp out near the sea in a kind of barracks thing, so we stayed there the whole time and we did the grinding and scraping quite a lot outside. But this sea turtle was so difficult to start getting into, right? So we got into this thing as, this is something that doesn't give up, right? This is something that keeps going in the face of everything against it, which is true, because if you see these where they lay their eggs, And then how these sea turtles
I've seen
mostly end up in
documentaries.
the sea.
Yeah, and
It's
they're just
outrageous.
every animal, land animal, bird, everything comes and just eats these little turtles. Like it
These
was an
tiny
awful
little guys.
documentary to watch. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
rooting for that little turtle and they zooming in on it, going, will he make it? And then the bird just comes and sweeps it. Even foxes and everything was like coming in and eating them.
Yeah. So, we give that to people who are very, very stubborn when it doesn't make any sense. You know how that is, like somebody's telling you that's a palm tree over there, and I'm going to tell you you're crazy because it's never been a palm tree. It's always been a fir, something like that. And I hang on to my stubborn interpretation. But that's when you want to think about a remedy like that, something in nature that can mimic that behavior, where you can actually make a big difference, make a big splash.
I have a question for you about the depression, though, because that is the one thing that I always come back to. One of the triturations that we did about the cassowary, when I found out that the emu the feather has got two like spines, it's got the
Yeah.
single entry point and then the two spines. I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And I got in touch with Dr. Paul Terrio and he said, well, emu has been done, so why don't you do cassowary? We found a cassowary feather, but we had so many accidents in that. Me and a friend of mine almost died in a car crash. Like we almost had it was crazy. It was 110 kilometers an hour on this highway. It was raining. There was a truck going up a hill, cars coming from the front. And then this car just pulled in front of us. And if I wasn't like acutely aware of what was going on, we would have been toast. Then this friend's husband witnessed a huge car accident. One of the other triturators, she actually broke her ankle as she was walking down to start the trituration. And then one of the other triturations in our group, she was in a car accident after we finished on her way home in a big car accident. And now, 3 years later, she's still got back injuries from it. So I won't lie. Like, this is one thing that myself and, a few of my homeopath friends have had a few conversations about. Like, it almost feels that if you go into kind of like a soul contract with a substance when you sign up to do a trituration, because if you are saying, yes, I am willing to offer my body and soul to bring it through the message that you want to give to the world and how we can heal people. But sometimes there is a price to pay. And some people talk about using various energetic protection methods, like, when you're opening the space and you're asking for, whoever guidance to come in and protect the space. And when you're leaving for the day, you're closing that space. But I almost feel like we can do as much of all of that as we want. But if there's something the substance wants to show us, it's going to find a way to show us. So I don't know, maybe if like a magical way of protecting us, let me know. But it does sometimes feel like this is something that we need to warn people about, because that, I won't lie, that really shook me that, she was a client, well, still is a client of mine, but she came back and she's like, I've still got a sore back after that car accident 3 years later.
Wow.
Spent a lot of money on lots of chiros. And I feel awful because I'm like, is there something more that we could have done to protect this space? Is there like a extra guidance or an angel or something that we should have like called in to try and protect us? Or even like think of something like salmon, Jeremy's salmon proving, where like most of the people end up falling pregnant. Like if I was in that proving group, I would be so annoyed because I have two amazing kids. I don't want any more, but I would be really annoyed if I was in that proving. And actually somebody else told me, and this is somebody who really does do, lots of work to protect the space. And they were proving one of the venomous snakes. And apparently there was lots of lascivious behavior that happened and people leaving their partners and all sorts of interesting sexual things that happened in this proving. And then also there's another person recently who behaved awfully towards me, awfully. And she is now blaming everything on the triturations that she's done. But she did do 11 triturations in something like 3 days. So I don't know if that's it, but she's never taken ownership of how awful she's been to me. She's just blaming it on the trituration. So I have a twofold question. Can you blame your behavior on the trituration? And is there something that we can do to protect ourselves so we come out of it?
Well, yeah, I think you can have various items around you and you share what those items are. I usually have turquoise for protection. Almost, I don't think anybody knows me without having something turquoise, right? And I like the purple stones. The purple stones are important. But whatever is a sacred substance to you, a rock, a book, some music, something, we did get fairly serious about that too, because we also didn't want people to leave after a trituration and get in their cars and, assume that the world was the same as the one that they left a couple of hours ago, because it's not. So a ceremony for opening, right? Having some things. I usually have with me a dowser. I don't know if some people douse there, but the dowser might indicate whether you need a break or not. I mean, doing 11 triturations in 3 days, that's like saying.
And then releasing a book about all these triturations only a couple of months after, and courses and teaching other people about these remedies that have been triturated only 3-4 months ago. It's a wacky world out there. I tell you what, it's the wild west of homeopathy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could call it that. But, I would also say that in the end, whatever she did, it will make a contribution. It's gonna take a whole lot longer to comprehend because it's muddled. Because if one thing isn't finished acting inside of you, and in your energy field, how can you let something else in? I mean, that's creating a disturbance, right?
100%, that's my feeling. But then also going from one level of the trituration to the next every 15 minutes. So not doing the full hour of grinding and scraping, but just intuitively feeling that now is the time to go up to the next level. So, because I always play devil's advocate for myself, and I'm always trying to remind myself that there's so many things that I do in homeopathy now, like combination remedies or whatever else that I always said I would never do. So I'm always trying to think, is this the new way to do it? In 20 years' time, am I going to say that going up in a trituration level every 15 minutes and doing 11 remedies in 3 days is actually the way to do it? And maybe I've just been doing it wrong this whole time by triturating an hour. I don't know,
well,
Anneke, you tell me.
Well, in the book, in those days, we were pretty serious about 3 and 7, right? 7 grinding, 3 scraping. We always had timers. And then we somehow experimented with 6 and 4. Why does it have to be 7 and 3? Just because Whittle did it that way doesn't mean we have to do it that way. Let's do 6 and 4, because sometimes the grinding is very tedious. And if nothing is forthcoming, why do you need to stay there? So I think you can I think you can experiment with that, but if you know the remedy to your satisfaction when you are done with the process, that's what you want, right? That's what you want. I had an old Russian man who had been through the Leningrad hunger winter with his wife. He had been my patient for years. And he had prostate cancer. And, I just gave him things to, in a way, palliate his situation because I didn't know. His English wasn't that good, and he had obviously suffered a tremendous amount. And also at the time, what was happening at Peter Chapel. Did you ever hear of Peter Chapel?
I did, yeah. I had him to say, and I was trying to get Peter on the podcast, and he passed away just before I could get him on. I was heartbroken.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing, yeah. I had
Before
him on.
he came to California to do, I think he did 3 seminars for us. Very interesting man. But anyway, his remedies were coming in, which were basically sound files.
Yeah.
So we're playing around with triturations. We have the sound files. I have loads of C4, C5, C6, C7 remedies sitting around, and I keep giving this man, various things. And he's quite happy coming, and he brings his wife, and we have a cup of tea, and we have a chat. This was after we made the cancer angel. He came in and he said, I need something from you. I need a miracle. And I said, well, I just so happen to have this miracle right here that we just made last week.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
No, but I mean, it was so apropos because the seminar was over on Sunday and this is a Tuesday, right? And this man is asking for a miracle. So I gave him this remedy and I gave it as a solution so that he could take it as often as he wanted to and succuss each time in between. And gosh, he lived. And he was quite old. I mean, he was an adult in the hunger winter in the 40s, so he was already 70s, 80s. But he lived, I think he lived for 5 or 6 more years. And his daughter would just every once in a while contact me. And she would say, my dad is asking for more of that miracle remedy.
Wow.
And he never knew what it was because, if he wanted a miracle and I had one, why would I do anything to it to change that, the feeling of it? But, that to me said, okay, this is indeed a great remedy. And then it started being used. And we gave it to family members as well, because I think we're told spot on, anybody that has to deal with cancer of any kind needs that remedy.
I've never, apart from your book, never heard of it before, but I have a quick question. So at that seminar where you were triturating this remedy, did everyone have their own trituration bowl? And did you use a little bit of all the powder in the original remedy or the remedy that was made then? Or did you just use one person's powder?
No. We used some from everyone. Everyone generally in triturations there has their own mortar and pestle. Sometimes you share with one person, but it's better to have your own because your experience is going to be your experience and it's not going to be the same. But, there's one picture that I want to show you, which I thought was crazy. Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So these are two different people, right? It's the same remedy that we are making, but look how similar the form is and the shape is of the drawing.
Yeah.
So, you look at things like that, and I cannot tell you how different these two people are.
I mean, this is the magical. I really wish more homeopaths would do triturations. And in my opinion, it needs to be standard in the curriculum in all schools. So, when I started the Australian branch of the Centre for Homeopathic Education, Marcus Fernandez was like, Eugenie, you can add your own flavor, whatever you want. And I'm like, great, we're doing triturations, which was also why I ended up getting your book. Because I'm like, well, if I'm going to teach the students how to do it, I better make sure I'm doing it properly. And I'm really, really excited about getting copies of your book to give to our students as well. I can't wait. Yeah, it really is quite magical. There's a few different things that I want to ask you. It was about the practical side. That's right. The practical side of when you do a trituration. So, because as what we tend to do is we only, for the hour that we're triturating, everyone will be quiet and you'll just write down your own notes. And then at the end of each hour, we'll share our notes. But you're laughing. But what I sometimes just the actual practicality of it is sometimes I'm grinding with my left hand and then writing notes with my right hand. But then what I did recently is I just had my cell phone on notepad and then I had the voice to text. So it was as I was triturating by myself when I did the fringed violet recently. And so I was triturating and then just speaking while I was triturating and it was just doing voice to text, which was really great. And then, of course, it never spelled the word trituration correctly. So I had to just go in and use it would write situation or things like that. And I had to just find all the situations and try and change into trituration. But practically, what have you found works best?
Well, we all have, in the beginning, it was very important that everybody be quiet. And I did one big trituration in The Hague with Whittle and his girlfriend and 50, 60 people, right? And Whittle was very, very strict about quiet, And then what he did, as people started to relate their experience after the round, he started cutting certain people off. And I thought that was really interesting to watch and to see. So he was already registering things in his head. And if other people didn't go in that direction, he would just throw it out, which I thought, there's something not okay with this because A, it's not very respectful to the person that's just been working for an hour. And who knows, there might be something in there, So I think we just started talking, not like chattering and everything, but if something came up that wants to be said, then you just have to say it and keep going and not get stuck on it. But, you could say something, I'm experiencing these kinds of thoughts, right? You can say that. And then other people might fall in And it might actually synthesize the process more, right? Because I remember one tumbleweed actually is in the book, tumbleweed remedy. Do you have tumbleweeds in Australia? You must.
We did, yeah. When we crossed the Nullarbor, I saw something that was like tumbling across, and I was like, "Oh, that must be a tumbleweed." Yeah, I don't think we have them here, but we did cross like the Nullarbor, and then we saw something go across the road
Okay, yeah, horrible things. And we have them in the Southwest, and they get huge. They get like 6 feet big around. And if it's a desert storm, it's sand and tumbleweeds. So you're going to get hurt. Your cars are going to get hurt, because these things are big and they're abrasive. But when we were making the remedy from a tumbleweed, other interesting part about that is we were all starving. We were eating like idiots. Like, I had scones and butter, and I think we ate 3 pounds of butter in a span of 3 or 4 hours, and people had to go to the bathroom all the time. They had to pee all the time. It was so crazy, you know, and so you can't not notice that. Somebody that's just eaten half a loaf of bread and butter after 10 minutes needs the other half. You have to notice these things, and you have to.
Mm.
And there were 6 of us, and 3 of them had never done a trituration. 2 of them knew what a trituration was, but the other 3 were just visiting as friends, and they decided to participate. It was amazing. And my dog was eating like crazy too.
Wow.
So it was like in the atmosphere, right? It's there. So my feeling always is that it's better to talk about these big things when they're happening than it is to suffer by yourself, because you probably go through the process in a gentler way. Because sometimes it's hard and you don't want to go back to it, but you have to, because it's like you have to go through it. You're in the middle of the river and you have to get to the other side. There aren't a lot of choices.
Well, that's actually what I was wondering with this lady who had the car accident and still struggling with her back, because in your book, you do give some advice on, if you are getting stuck in a negative or whatever, if something's happened, if you're in a stuck state while you're triturating, I think you were mentioning that you just need to triturate up to the next potency, or sometimes you can take one down. So with this person, when I was reading your book, I was actually thinking of saying to her, do you want to triturate one level higher and see if that helps your back? Although I'm sure she probably doesn't want anything to do with that remedy ever again. But I was wondering whether I should reach out to her and say maybe to try that.
I think take it down. Yeah,
Take it
but I
down
would
rather.
take it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just
Because
give her
the
a dose,
interesting
like
thing
get her
is
to
that the
actually
way,
triturate down?
yeah, and I would triturate lower dose
Okay.
so that she gets out of
Gotcha.
it, right? If you go higher dose, you don't know what's in it for her. She's obviously very sensitive to this particular substance, right? So if you take her higher, we don't know how much higher she would have to go. And if it's more to do with accidents and getting hurt,
Yeah.
my sort of intuition would say, go down a little bit.
I like that.
Go down one level and just have her have the remedy even at her house, or do it with her, and just do like a half an hour of grinding and put it away, do a little bit of scraping, put it away, and not sit with it all the time. But I think because it's physical, so physical, that the solution has to come from a more physical level rather than. But I don't know, like it's there isn't a hard and fast rule about this, because some people probably would say go up.
Do you prefer doing a trituration over a couple of days so you can leave it like overnight and then do the rest the next day, or do you think it's not that important?
No, practical wise, it's often impossible to do a whole trituration on a continual basis because you don't know how far you have to go, But it's also impractical to think, if you have to go to C7 or C8, to do that in one day.
Yeah.
We made a remedy and we made it worldwide, when we had the H1N1 flu, swine flu, I guess it was. So we had people in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, England, and various places in the States at the same time, chronologically, and we were in contact by whatever we had at the time. I don't think we had Zoom yet.
Skype.
I think we were Skyping from time to time and, how are things going there and how are things going there? What are you experiencing? But what we experienced locally, and I think what most people experience in the various places, is that the incidence of children dying from the swine flu, which was very high because it affected the lungs, and the little kids just didn't have anything to compensate for that kind of thing happening. And in our general area, that number went down significantly. It didn't wipe out the flu.
Mm.
But, doing a thing like that I always wanted somebody to do it during COVID, but we had different, we had Peter's COVID remedy. Peter Chappell had a COVID. And the woman in Seattle, Elizabeth, what's her last name? I don't know. She had a pharmacy, a homeopathic pharmacy, and she did all of her own triturations. And in the US, COVID arrived in Seattle, and she had a COVID remedy right away.
Mm.
She was first thing she did, came in the country. She didn't doubt it. She just said, we're going to need this remedy. And then I ordered it from Portugal, a little while, right? And it came in the mail and it got stuck in customs. So then the shipper, I think it was FedEx at the time, he starts charging storage charges for this envelope with, like a half size. It's just got this remedy in it. And we always used to call them potentized vitamin C.
Mm.
Well, customs wanted to know what was in it. Potentized vitamin C. It's vitamin C that people grind down in a mortar and a pestle. And for some people who are ill, we make up a story, but we all had the same story.
That's a good one.
But so I finally, after months, I said to them, how much will it cost me to get this remedy out of customs? And by the time I would have paid the storage charges and the customs charges, it would have cost me $200.
That's ridiculous.
So I said, send it back. So then Elizabeth sent it to a friend on the East Coast. And when she came, she brought it. But, there was a good year and a half, I think, because people weren't traveling in the beginning, right? Because there are ways to bypass that. But
well, I have to say, Ambika Waters has a genius idea. So between her and her students, they're using dissolvable paper and then just putting the medicating potency on the dissolvable paper, then just posting it in an envelope. And when you get to the other side, you just put it in your alcohol. You have your remedy.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Good.
Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm sure she won't mind me sharing that, but I thought that was pretty genius.
Yeah. Well, she's from part of Arizona that I know pretty well.
Oh,
because Jim's parents lived there. They retired there. And so I visited very often towards the end of his mom's life. His dad died fairly soon after we met. Anyway.
Well, I have another couple of questions for you because me and my homeopathy friends are very big fangirls of your book. So I texted them early and I was like, what questions do you want me to ask her? And so my friend Janie Lavelle, who is in Ireland, and I have to say, the reason this bird feathers are chopped up is because I cut it into 4 equal parts, the male and the female, and I posted one to Melbourne to my friend Sarah Valentini, and one to Finland to Reita Pojoinen, and one to Ireland to Janie Lavelle. So Janie Lavelle, so we're going to triturate it together on the 3rd of March. So Janie said, yes, I would love to ask her exactly about she sent a message earlier. So she said, in your experience of conducting triturations, have other substances, animals or plants, revealed themselves to you while you triturating another substance? And if so, how do you understand this? And how do you feel this happens? So she gives an example of they recently triturated holly and then a jaguar kept on coming up. And then when they were triturating chocolate, hedgehogs kept on coming up. And when they did Staphysagria, lions kept on coming up. So have you ever had this where you do one substance and then another one comes up along with it?
No, I don't think so. I don't think I've experienced that, but I would interpret that as the energy of that particular animal having something to do with what's going on in the substance at that time. So when that animal shows up, something's happening in the substance, in the trituration. So it's an important point when something else shows up. because in many cultures and folklores, animals are friends who come into the picture to help us, right? Sometimes they come into the picture to devour us. You don't know, but you need to know what's going on in the primary trituration when these creatures show up, because there's got to be a relationship, and I like what she says that, they're not doing an animal and another animal shows up. That I wouldn't like, 'cause that sounds messy to me. What are you doing then? I mean, what are you getting into? But I think something showing up, that happens all the time. I mean, you know that. And the most unexpected things. Think about the things that you dream about when you're doing a trituration. It's like, oh, well, that was interesting. You wake up in the morning and you write it down, but for me, I have done hypnosis for a long, long time. So the subconscious mind part is very, very important, where you're just in the energy field without, your frontal lobes. You don't really need them. Wait, they're language machines. They're not the feeling, emotional arena. But the dream world in almost all triturations are very unusual and no.
Well, I have a question for you about dreams, actually. Do you have a hot tip on how you can better remember your dreams? I've been trying to keep a dream journal, but I have found that if I am just like a little bit quiet in the morning and I don't hop straight on my phone or something, then if I can get like a little thread of the dream and I just stay quiet long enough, it can sometimes come back. But if you got any other hot tips?
Yeah, I do. Actually, there is such a thing as lucid dreaming. And you probably can look it up on the internet and find out a lot of information and probably get some YouTubes on it, because there are a number of tips, and I think especially in this day and age, when we are so impulse driven because stuff's coming in all the time from all directions. So to become quiet, and to become, even in your dream world, to become a participant and an observer, but not an active doer. You're not pushing it in any direction. Although you can actually direct your dreams, but you give yourself certain instructions before you go to sleep. Not like, blah, 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 do this, do that, but, just suggestions like, I dreamt about a little boy with a red jacket, and I would like to know more about that little boy, or whatever it was. And then very often you'll get more information, but you sort of ask you ask the universe, help me out here. I would like to know what this is about, right? We made a remedy and we didn't even know what to call it. So in the end, we called it IMIT because that was the name that was on one of the colored pencils that we had. But there were, I think, 8 of us in that situation. And so there wasn't any particular substance, right? It was just, let's pursue this idea of angels, let's make another angel because the world is going to hell in a handbasket, as they say, and we need help, and let's see what we can come up with. In that particular situation, which took place over, I think, 3 weekends that we worked, consecutive weekends, but people have jobs and lives and you can't be triturated all the time. There it was really quite important that there was all this quiet listening and observing going on. And in the end, what are we going to call this? What do we do with this now? If we have I think we went up to C7. Here we have a remedy. And what does it actually do? It's some kind of an angel. Because we used to do yoga before a little bit and after a little bit. And do you know about family constellations?
Yes.
So I used to lead them. We do a family constellation with various bits and pieces that had come up during the trituration, right? You're going to represent the feeling of craziness, or you're going to represent hunger, and you're going to represent the loss of the mother, or whatever had come up. You just go through the notes, this needs to be represented. And then we would have that constellation go for an hour or something. And different things would then also start to synthesize. It started to make sense, why somebody would feel crazy, and also how that could be avoided, in the constellation by just changing the placement a little bit or by putting something else in, mainly by putting other things in, because I always wanted to stay true to the trituration process, right? But it's a really interesting exercise to do. And it's not difficult, so if you have 5 or 6 different themes, just assign a theme to one person and have them find their spaces in the room and see what happens when they get together. Do they make sense together? Don't they make sense together? It's just another tool, I think, and it's another totally in the energetic field kind of. I'm not a friend of the frontal lobes. I mean, I like for them to keep working, but they get in the way a lot.
Yeah, they really do. They really do. I have another question. Do you think we should warn our family and friends and colleagues if we're going to do a trituration? Because so often, once in case we're rude to them, and then if we are, does that excuse us? I want to know that for me personally. But also, because they do really, in a way, become part of that feel of that trituration, almost whether they want to or not. So sometimes I do feel a little bit guilty,
I think
when I'm doing one, because I know my family definitely are, whether they don't really have a choice, but they do kind of come along for the ride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have no choice. I think definitely always tell them what you are doing and where you are doing it and who you're doing it with, so they have some resource, right? Hey, my mom's acting really weird, Is that part of the trituration or not? Because if they ask you, you're not going to think what you're doing is weird. You're just doing it because it's in that energetic field, right? So, yeah, I would always put them on alert. And I remember one remedy might have been persimmon, where I kept saying to Jim, it's not you, it's the remedy. Don't worry about this, But yeah, no, in the beginning, we never used to worry about things like that. And there are some people who are more, I think, relaxed and easygoing about these kinds of things. But I think you need to alert people that you're close to, that you're doing it, because you are different while you're in the middle of a trituration.
Yeah. You can see I'm still clearly processing my issues, hey, because I'm not happy about this person using her awful behavior as part of the trituration, not taking responsibility for it. So the amazing self-reflective learning exercise that has come up for me from, this experience, is exactly these questions like, wow, this has happened. Is it ethical for somebody to then just blame their behavior on the remedy, or is there some sort of personal responsibility that needs to be in there? And then if we're going to do this, do we need to warn the people around us? And it's really interesting. I mean, this is why I love this job. You never run out of interesting conversations you have in your own head about what exactly is going on here.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, that puts a good thing that you're doing is being in contact with people in different places who are doing similar things. Somebody you might want to talk to at some point is Kim Kalina. Do you know her?
I have her booked in a couple of weeks. So she was scheduled in about a year ago. I think about a year ago, and then things happened, but she has rescheduled. So I think the 3rd of March, exactly from there. Oh, I have to go check. I think it was the 3rd of March. I can't wait to speak with her. I'm really, really excited. It's been a long time of trying to get her on too.
Very, very interesting woman. Yeah. And very spiritual and also grounded at the same time, which
that's
doesn't
the
seem like
important part. So I think spirituality that's not grounded is where things get scary and wacky. And there's lots of ungrounded, especially these days with social media and things, all these ungrounded spiritual people out there. I clearly have more issues to process. Sorry, I thought I'd process all this stuff that had happened, but clearly I have not. So I'll just air all my dirty laundry on the podcast for everyone to listen to. I have another practical question for you. When we're doing the feather, because obviously we just want 1 gram of it and then 9 grams of the powder.
Yeah.
Would you scrape a little bit of that off and then cut a little bit of the feather? Or would you how would you process that in the bowl?
Yeah, I would get a little bit of the spine of the feather.
Oh, yeah. So that spiny bit.
And that might be hard to grind down. So you could shave that.
Okay.
Right? You could take a razor blade and shave some of that off.
Mm-hmm.
And the feathers you can just cut because they will disappear very quickly.
Okay.
Because we used to do, scrape some of the talons and some of the beaks and then mix it with, but you don't always have access, and if you have access to a bird like that, it's usually a bird that's in a safe situation in a cage or being treated or, has been ill. So I think that's one of the problems that we ran into in this book.
Beautiful.
Which, have you read this?
I haven't read it, no, but is that the one? Oh, no, that's with Jeremy Shaw, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't.
Well, it's really mainly the writing is Judy and I.
Uh-huh.
But we did a lot of these triturations ourselves. And what we did, the interesting thing that we did, and this is why it's an interesting book for homeopaths, especially, because we give you the bird, right? Natural history bird. Then we give you the trituration, and then we'd give you cases if there were cases. But it's very interesting to juxtapose them so closely together and not have to theorize too much about it. Jonathan's big thing was no theorization, no theorize. So he warned us about that a million times.
Where can people purchase that book? Like, I always, when I have an author on the show, I always ask them, where is the best place for you if people purchase the books? Because I've heard so many horror stories of authors not actually getting any money from the books that they've sold. So where's the best place for people to get
no.
the bird book and also the Trituration Handbook?
We sold it ourselves. We sold them ourselves. And we sold them also on Amazon. But when I moved here, and after Judy died especially, we kind of sold the bookend of the business and we had some CDs left and to Olivier. Emrys, Emrys booksellers?
I know Emrys.
Yeah. So they have the rights to the books, but if I give you a box of books, I don't have to feel bad.
Well, I can't wait to get your box of books.
I have a box.
And spoiler alert for our students there, they've got something exciting coming their way.
Yeah. But I do recommend that, you get a couple of bird books from Olivier. And because there's a lot of good information there. And we in California sort of broke the trituration ground mostly with this book. I did more in Europe because my family was in Holland and I would go to Holland and find some homeopathy thing to do so I could write it off taxes, right? Well, that's how it goes,
You got to do it.
So I remember I had one remedy or one seminar with Jans Fulton, right? I knew nothing about the periodic table when I went in there, and I learned so much, because then when you have to grasp for everything, you're really engaged at a different level. I mean, it's all frontal lobe. I need to understand this, why should Oram be over there? And how does it make sense? And, because he just come out with the elements, I think, his first book. But I knew, I was like a rookie among all these types living homeopaths. And the same in The Hague happened one of the first times I went to Alise's seminar. There's all these great homeopaths, all these great names that you've been reading about. And here they are, here you are. But it's good. I think it's a good way to learn.
It's a very good way. Well, that was one of the other things that I was going to ask you, because you and I both feel the same, that all homeopaths should be taught trituration at school.
Absolutely, no doubt
but
about it.
Why do you think that's important? So if you've got somebody, like maybe we've got some principals of schools sitting here that are not currently doing it, or if you've got some homeopaths listening to this episode that have never done a trituration, give them like a 1-minute elevator pitch of why they need to do triturations.
Okay, so let's say the person knows arnica. We all know arnica, right? We think. So let's do well, you must have access to the real thing. So we don't all have access to the alpine flower. But, you do all have access to calendula or something. I mean, it's a really simple, basic remedy, not a complicated remedy. And just have them do a little bit of grinding and scraping with that particular thing that maybe that grows in their area, but something that they know, right? A homeopathic remedy that they know, and see, have them experience that information will come to the surface from the substance that is going to match a lot of what we know about these, because all the remedies in homeopathy that we know really, really well come from some kind of herbal knowledge or, there's a lot there. So anyway, it's all interesting stuff, and it's sort of like, well, okay, you may not want to do this all the time, but I'd like you to give it a try with something that you know, just so you can experience it and so that you can see whether it's useful for you to do, you know. But the woman that's doing 11 remedies in 3 days, that worries me a little bit because
Worries me too.
how do you know? How do you know?
I know. And then I think the worst part is always not integrating that, but just like writing a book and going straight on to teaching it to others. That's why I say it's the wild west of homeopathy. There's lots of interesting things happening. But hey, who knows? 20 years time, maybe we all go, oh no, we've been doing it wrong. This is the way we should have been doing it, making like 11 remedies.
I think we're making progress is all. I mean, because in a way, homeopathy was static, right? For a long, long time, couple 100 years. Like nothing happened. I went to the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. and looked at their homeopathy collection, and you see collections from these great people that we all read and learn from. And, nothing happened in their lifetime to their amount of resource homeopathically. And people are not the same anymore. We are not the same creatures walking the earth today that walked the earth 200 years ago. So there has to be something happening in this particular healing art that fits with the current time, with the here and now, in my opinion. I mean, it doesn't make sense if it doesn't, right?
Well, Anneke, if you still have another trituration left on you, welcome to come join us for the red-tailed black cockatoo. It's sure to be a hoot. We'd love somebody representing Portugal as well.
Yeah, well, oh, you mean I could do it here? I wouldn't have to come to Australia.
No, we're just going to do it live on Zoom. Although the time, then time zones it'll be your morning, but we can chat about that afterwards. I'm sure I can get some feathers posted to you pretty quickly.
Well, it's a thought.
Oh, I won't put you on the spot here. You can have a little think about it. Is there anything? I actually have to giggle because out of 400 episodes, every single episode, I always start with the same question: how were you first introduced to homeopathy? But when you jumped in, you were talking about the book and the Trituration. I'm like, I'm not going to stop you because I love where you're going, and we'll just get straight into it. But maybe we can finish this episode where you can quickly share with us how you were first introduced to homeopathy. Like, how did you first hear about it and how did you decide to study it?
Oh, very interesting story. I had my office, psychotherapy office, in the same building with a woman named Diana Kilman, who did Jinshin Jutsu, which is a Japanese healing art, right? It's probably closest to osteopathy than anything else, right? It's something with different holds to access different parts of the body. And she and I were teaching stress reduction seminars on the weekends. And we kept mostly we got men coming to this on Saturdays and, gave them the whole spiel and taught them a little bit about relaxation. And for some reason, we ran into something about acupuncture and homeopathy. We ran into acupuncture because that's what people were assuming she was doing. And we went to this library and they had a book on acupuncture and homeopathy. I didn't know anything about homeopathy, but at that time, I was suffering terribly from hot flashes. I mean, I had a horrible time. And, the Western medical thing where they put you on hormone replacement therapy, I could not take it because my system just could not take the amount of progesterone that was in there. I was a monster. You know? Anyway, I tried acupuncture and made some difference, but not enough for me. So then I went to this homeopath, Jonathan Shore, actually, who was in our neighborhood. And I went to see him. And at the end, a long, rambling story that went all over the place, in my opinion, he said, open your mouth. And he threw in a whole vial of sulfur. Right? And he threw in the whole vial because, of course, you can take one pellet, which is the same value as 100 pellets, but he wanted pharmacists to make money too. And the pharmacy actually was in the same building. There were a couple of homeopaths in there. And I went back in 6 weeks, quite a bit of improvement, but not quite where I wanted it to be. So we rambled on for a little while longer, and he said, open your mouth. And he threw in a vial of sepia. I mean, and after the sepia, my hot flashes were completely gone. So the sulfur and the sepia, it's like, it almost sounds beyond dumb,
Yeah.
because it's just what you would do. But it sure helped me. So then I got really interested in homeopathy. And Diana and I decided to go to homeopathy school in San Francisco. So we did 3 years studying there with Richard Pitt and various people who come in and do guest lectures and stuff. And then after 3 years, you start kind of practicing right away anyway when you know about it, because there are some things that are just so obvious. There is one of these great picture books, and it's like where it puts a body type with every remedy, and it puts the substance and the various things, and it's all big letters. It's almost like a children's book, Beautiful. I put that on my coffee table in my office, when people got really interested. So people got interested in things like calcium, and the Kali's, because the Kali's were portrayed as these accounting type people, and the body types that they showed up with were so different. And so, happy as a pea in a pod in homeopathy. It just fit with everything else that I was doing, because I was always looking for new things to help my patients, because I specialized in trauma. So I got some seriously disturbed people coming in, and I wanted to be able to help them all. I knew the tools had to be there, so you just have to keep looking. And if you find something that fits you, where you can actually benefit another human being, then that's the direction you follow.
Absolutely. It sounds like between the psychotherapy and the hypnosis and everything else that you're doing, it sounds like a
But
great
see, if you look
combination.
at it like psychotherapy, and then immediately after I started my private practice, I realized I needed more than talk therapy. So hypnosis. So I went to this hypnosis person in Berkeley and said, hypnotize me. And he said, why? And I said, "Look, I want to know what it's like." So he did. He hypnotized me. And in that particular session, resolved a relationship with a friend. My friend lived in France, and she was going to commit suicide. And we had been talking about that. But and I didn't tell him anything. He just hypnotized me. This all happened subconsciously. Then I went back 3 weeks later and I said, okay, hypnotize me again. And again, he said, why? And I said, well, I want to know a little bit more. And again, I had this thing happening totally in my head where all these boxes started fitting on each other, out of a big pile of boxes there grew this structure. And what it meant, I didn't know. But my friend in France did not commit suicide because I saw her in a little submarine and she had everything she needed in there. So, when I talked to her after that first hypnosis and I told her what had happened to me, her life changed significantly. She left that man who was very abusive, and he actually had a suicide pact. They were going to do it together. a horrible person. Anyway,
Oh.
but that results. And then I learned hypnosis, and I was a member of the American Society for Clinical Hypnosis for a long time. So that fits, right? Then I found homeopathy, got into that. That fits. And in between, I did all kinds of different body works that might help people, right? And then I found family constellations. Again, it fits, right? It's the same path. It's a slightly different tool, but you're still working totally in the energy field. And that's why I think most of the solutions of most of our problems lie there. You know.
Anneke, I could talk to you all day long, but I just got a text from my husband going, "We're about to have dinner. Are you joining us?" So I should probably go home and have some dinner.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was such an honor to hang out with you. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for your incredible book. It's such a service that you've given to the homeopathic community by writing this all down in the easy to understand way that you have. And then also, I love how you talk about the triturations that you've done yourself and the experiences. And that is really powerful. So thank you for this beautiful body of work. And thank you to
Well,
Judy as
thank
well.
you for having me on. It's been very enjoyable.
A pleasure. All the best. Have a great day.
All right. Take care. You too.
Bye.